My wife Lila just started her own small real estate business, which was great. I was super proud of her. But then came Mark, her new business partner. At first, I didn't think much of it. Lila would mention him now and then, talking about deals they were closing or properties they were looking at. But soon, now and then, turned into almost every single evening. Mark started showing up at our house, unannounced, sometimes staying late into the night. He'd waltz in like he owned the place. He'd help himself to a beer from my fridge, grab my tools from the garage without asking, and just walk into any room he pleased, never knocking. It was starting to really get under my skin. Every time I brought it up with Leela, she'd get defensive. "He's just helping with the business. Don't make it weird," she'd say. But it already was weird. Something was definitely off. I just couldn't put my finger on what it was. So, I decided to do something about it. I needed to know what was really going on when I wasn't around. My plan? A hidden camera. I found a tiny one online, disguised as a USB charger. It was perfect. The next day, I plugged it into an outlet in our living room, the one with the clearest view of the front door and the main area where they usually worked. I told Leela I was heading out to meet some friends for a couple of hours. As I drove away, my heart was pounding. I didn't know what I was going to find, but I had a gut feeling it wasn't going to be good. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the camera app. Motion detected. I pulled over, opened the app, and started watching the live feed. Mark had arrived. He let himself in with a key. A key. Since when did he have a key to my house? Lila greeted him with a hug that seemed a little too long, a little too familiar. They sat down on the couch, laptops open, but they weren't talking about work. They were laughing and whispering, their heads close together. My stomach twisted into a knot. What was happening in my own home? I kept watching, my hands shaking. Mark leaned in and whispered something in Lila's ear. She giggled, and then she leaned in and kissed him. Not just a friendly peck on the cheek. A real, passionate kiss. My world just shattered into a million pieces. The man who was drinking my beer, using my tools, and walking around my house like he owned it, was also kissing my wife. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. All her excuses, all her "don't make it weird" comments, it was all a lie. I turned off the feed. I couldn't watch anymore. I just sat in my car, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The image of them kissing burned into my mind. I drove back home, my mind racing. I wasn't going to storm in and start yelling. No, that's what they'd expect. I needed a plan, a way to expose them both, a way to make them face what they had done. This was my house, my life they were disrespecting, and I was going to take it back. The next day, I acted completely normal. I made breakfast, kissed Leela goodbye as she left for a meeting, and waited. I knew Mark would be over later, so I'd spent the morning setting up. I didn't just have one camera anymore. I had 3 more, covering every angle of the living room and kitchen. I also had an audio recorder. This time, I wasn't just going to see what happened. I was going to hear every single word. That evening, I told Lila I had to work late at the office. As I watched them on the live feed from my car, parked just down the street, my anger turned into a cold, calculated resolve. They came in, laughing, holding hands. They poured themselves drinks, toasting to something. "To us," Mark said, "and to our new life once you finally leave him." Lila smiled and clinked her glass against his. "Soon," she said. "He suspects nothing." He's so gullible. My blood ran cold. This was more than just a fling. They were planning a future together, a future built on my life, my money. They started talking about the business, but it wasn't about properties. It was about how they were siphoning money from the company accounts into a separate one that I knew nothing about. They were stealing from the business that I had helped fund. They were not only betraying me personally, but financially as well. That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. I had everything I needed. The video, the audio, the proof of their affair and their financial fraud. It was time to stop watching from the shadows. The next morning, I told Lila we needed to talk. I also told her I had invited Mark over because there were some business matters I wanted to discuss with both of them. The look of panic on her face was priceless, but she tried to cover it up. Mark arrived, looking smug as usual. He probably thought I was finally going to offer him a beer myself. They both sat on the couch, the same couch where they had kissed, where they had plotted against me. I didn't waste any time. I turned on the large TV on the wall. "I think you two have something you want to see," I said, my voice eerily calm. I pressed play. The video started, silent at first. The footage from the first hidden camera, the hug, the whispers, and then the kiss. Lila gasped. Mark's face went pale. They looked at each other, then at me, their eyes wide with horror. "What is this?" Lila stammered. "It's called evidence," I replied, and then I unmuted the audio from the second night. Their voices filled the room. Their toast. Their plans to leave me. Their discussion about stealing money from the business. The color drained completely from their faces. They were caught. Utterly and completely caught. There were no more lies, no more excuses. Just the ugly truth playing out for all of us to see and hear. Mark tried to sputter some sort of denial, but the proof was undeniable. Lila just sat there, tears streaming down her face, but I felt no pity. She had made her choice. "Get out of my house," I said to Mark, my voice low and dangerous. Now, he scrambled to his feet and practically ran out the door. Then I looked at Lila, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved and trusted. "You too," I said. "Pack a bag. You're done here." The aftermath was messy, as you can imagine. Divorce is never easy. But armed with the evidence I had collected, the legal process was surprisingly straightforward. The proof of the affair and the financial fraud made the settlement heavily in my favor. I got the house and a significant portion of our assets. I also pressed charges against both of them for embezzlement. Their little real estate empire came crashing down around them. Last I heard, Mark was facing serious legal trouble and Lila was struggling to pick up the pieces of the life she had so carelessly thrown away. It was a painful, gut-wrenching experience, but installing that hidden camera was the best decision I ever made. It gave me the truth, and the truth, as they say, sets you free. It allowed me to close a very painful chapter of my life and start fresh, on my own terms. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone, and it does get better. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. It all started on a Tuesday. One of those ridiculously long days at the office where you read just counting down the minutes until you can go home. I was neck-deep in spreadsheets when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark, my wife Lila's new business partner. "Hey man, I'm at your place." Lila said, "It's cool." I stared at the message, confused. Mark, at my house. Why Lila was supposed to be at her mom's place across town for the evening. My heart started to beat a little faster. Why would he be there alone? It just didn't make any sense. I immediately tried calling Lila. The phone rang and rang, then went straight to voicemail. That knot in my stomach tightened. Okay, maybe her phone died. Maybe she's driving. I tried to come up with a dozen logical explanations, but none of them felt right. I texted her, "Hey, Mark is at the house. What's up?" No reply. The silence was deafening. The numbers on my spreadsheet blurred together. I couldn't focus. My mind was racing, picturing all sorts of scenarios, each one worse than the last. I tried calling her again and again. Voicemail every time. After what felt like an eternity, probably 2 or 3 hours later, my phone finally rang. It was Lila. The relief I felt was instantly replaced by a fresh wave of anxiety when I heard her voice. She sounded off, flustered. "Hey, sorry, my phone was on silent," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my own voice steady. Mark texted me. He said he's at our house. What's going on? There was a pause on her end, just long enough for my suspicion to grow into a monster. "Oh, right. Gosh, I totally forgot to tell you. I gave him the spare key last week. He just needed to pick up some urgent paperwork for the new project." Paperwork? A spare key? My mind reeled. "You gave him a key to our house?" I asked, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. We had never given a spare key to anyone except our parents. "Yeah, it was just easier that way," she said, trying to sound casual, but her voice was strained. "He sometimes needs to grab files when I'm not around." It's no big deal, honey, but it felt like a very big deal. Who gives a business partner, someone she'd only known for a few months, a key to their home? The excuse felt thin, flimsy. It was the first red flag, a giant crimson banner waving right in my face. And even though I tried to ignore it, a seed of doubt had been planted. And I had a terrible feeling it was about to grow. The next few weeks were a masterclass in gaslighting. Every time I brought up my unease about Mark, Lila would shut me down. I was being paranoid, controlling, insecure. "He's just a friend and a business partner. That's it," she'd insist. "You need to trust me." I wanted to. I really did. But little things kept happening. A late-night text from him that she'd quickly hide. A business dinner that I wasn't invited to. Her car, which I tracked on our family app, showing her at a park near his apartment, not at the office like she claimed. When I confronted her, she had an answer for everything. The texts were about a deadline. The dinner was for clients. The park. Oh, she just needed some fresh air before heading home. Each explanation was plausible enough on its own, but together they painted a picture I didn't want to see. One Friday, I decided I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. I told Lila I was going on a weekend fishing trip with my buddies. It was a lie. Soon as I was supposedly on the road, I turned around and checked into a cheap motel just a few blocks from our house. I felt like a spy in a bad movie, my heart pounding with a mix of guilt and dread. I just needed to know the truth, one way or another. I waited. The hours crawled by. Around 9 p.m., I saw Mark's car pull into our driveway. He got out, walked right up to our front door, and let himself in with a key. My breath caught in my throat. He was there, just like I feared. I sat in my car, frozen. What was I supposed to do? Storm in there, make a scene. For an hour, I just watched the house. The lights were on in the living room. Then they moved to the bedroom, and then they went out. That's when something inside me snapped. I couldn't just sit there. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I unlocked the door, my own key feeling heavy and strange. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked down the hallway towards our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there they were. The image is seared into my brain, a permanent scar on my memory. The world just stopped. It was a complete betrayal, a gut punch that knocked all the air out of my lungs. I didn't scream, I didn't yell. I just stood there, a ghost in my own home. They scrambled, shocked, their faces a mixture of panic and guilt. Lila started stammering. "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. There was no excuse, no plausible explanation this time. Mark, looking pathetic, grabbed his clothes and scurried out of my house without even looking at me. Then it was just me and Lila, standing in the ruins of our marriage. The silence was heavier than any words could ever be. I looked at her, the woman I had promised to love forever, and I didn't recognize her. I just turned around, walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. The days that followed were a blur of pain. I stayed with a friend, unable to face our home, our memories. Every object, every photo was tainted. Lila bombarded me with texts and voicemails, a pathetic mix of apologies and justifications. It was a mistake, she pleaded. I was lonely. It meant nothing, but her words were hollow. How could it mean nothing? She had given another man a key to our life, welcomed him into our bed. The trust, the very foundation of our relationship, had been systematically demolished, lie by lie. There was nothing left to salvage. I told her I wanted a divorce. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, but also the only one possible. I had to choose myself. I had to choose to heal, even if it meant walking through fire to get there. The divorce was messy and painful, dragging out the agony. I had to sell the house I had once called home. Seeing it empty was like looking at a hollowed-out version of my own heart. But with every box I packed, I felt a tiny bit lighter. I was shedding the weight of the lies and the betrayal. It wasn't easy. There were days I could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by waves of sadness and anger. I started seeing a therapist, which was one of the best things I did. Talking about it, getting it all out in a safe space, helped me process the trauma and understand that her actions were not a reflection of my worth. It was her failure, her brokenness, not mine. Slowly, very slowly, I began to rebuild. I focused on my work, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and rediscovered hobbies I had let slide. I started working out, channeling my anger and frustration into something productive. The physical exertion was a release, clearing my head and making me feel strong again, both physically and mentally. I learned to enjoy my own company, to find peace in solitude. It was a long journey, and the scars are still there. They probably always will be, but they're no longer open wounds. They're reminders of what I survived. That first red flag, that text message from Mark, was a warning I initially tried to ignore. But now I know. Always trust your gut. It's usually right. Today, I'm in a much better place. I'm stronger, wiser, and more in tune with myself than ever before. I survived the ultimate betrayal, and I came out the other side. And if you're going through something similar, know that you can too. It gets better, I promise. Thanks for listening to my story. The next morning, the house felt eerily quiet. Lila had already left for work, and I was alone with a knot of suspicion tightening in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the perfect life we had built was starting to crack at the seams. I had to know. I found myself standing at the door of the small office she used when working from home, a room that had always been her private sanctuary. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of guilt and fear. What was I even looking for? I didn't know, but I knew I had to look. My hands trembled as I pushed the door open. The room was tidy, almost clinical. A stack of papers sat neatly on her desk, a pen placed perfectly parallel to it. Everything was in its place, except for the small, overflowing wastebasket tucked under the desk. It seemed out of character for Lila, who is usually so meticulous. I hesitated for a moment, feeling like a trespasser in my own home. But the image of her distracted face from the night before pushed me forward. I knelt down, my knees cracking on the hardwood floor, and started sifting through the discarded papers. There were coffee-stained napkins, old sticky notes with crossed-out to-do lists, and junk mail. For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe the stress of my own job was making me see shadows where there were none. I was about to stand up, to abandon this foolish and invasive search, when my fingers brushed against a different kind of paper. It was thicker, more substantial than the rest. I pulled it out. It was a crumpled receipt, balled up tightly as if someone had tried to obliterate it. My breath hitched as I carefully smoothed it out on the floor. The ink was slightly faded, but the words were clear, and each one felt like a punch to the gut. It was from the Gilded Lily, a ridiculously expensive cocktail bar downtown, the kind of place we never went to. The date stamped at the top was from the previous night, the same night she told me she was staying late at her mom's place to help with a leaky pipe. My eyes scanned the items listed. 2 midnight kiss cocktails, 1 order of truffle fries to share, and then the final line item, the one that made the air leave my lungs in a rush. 1 king suite, hotel room, paid in cash. The receipt felt like it was burning my hand, a physical manifestation of the betrayal that was now searing through me. I read it again and again, hoping I had misread it, hoping my mind was playing tricks on me. But the letters remained stubbornly the same. 2 cocktails, an appetizer for 2. 1 hotel room. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening finality. The late nights at the office, the hushed phone calls she'd quickly end when I walked into the room, the new expensive perfume she'd been wearing. It all made a terrible kind of sense now. My first impulse was to storm into her office, to throw the receipt in her face and demand an explanation. I wanted to scream, to cry, to break something. The anger was a hot, molten thing rising in my chest, threatening to consume me whole. But then, a cold, calculating thought cut through the rage. Confronting her now with just this one piece of paper would be a mistake. She was smart, she was quick. She would deny it. She would twist the story, say she was with a friend, that it was a business meeting, that I was crazy and jealous. She would make me the bad guy, and a part of me, the part that still loved her desperately, would want to believe her. No, I couldn't let that happen. I needed more than just a receipt. I needed undeniable, irrefutable proof. The kind of proof she couldn't talk her way out of. I folded the receipt carefully, the paper now feeling fragile and precious. A key to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to unlock. I slipped it into my pocket. The crinkle of the paper, a constant reminder of my new, secret mission. The love and trust I had for Lila felt like it was evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard determination. I was no longer just a loving partner. I was an investigator in my own life, and this receipt was my first clue. I walked out of the office and closed the door softly behind me, leaving the room exactly as I had found it. On the surface, everything was normal, but underneath, a silent war had just been declared. I didn't know who she was with or why she was doing this, but I was going to find out. Every lie, every secret, I would uncover it all. My mind was already racing, planning my next steps. I needed to check phone records, bank statements, her work calendar. I had to become a detective, piecing together the hidden life of the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. The image of her face, smiling at me over breakfast just that morning, flashed in my mind. Was any of it real? Or had our entire relationship been a performance? The pain of that thought was sharp, but I pushed it down. There was no time for pain now. There was only time for the truth. I looked around our home, at the photos of us on the walls, smiling, happy. It all felt like a lie. A beautifully constructed stage for a play I didn't know I was a part of. The hunt for proof had begun. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was going to destroy one of us. I just had to make sure it wasn't me. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took, no matter how ugly the truth turned out to be. The game was on. Something felt off. It's a gut feeling, right? A cold knot in your stomach that you try to ignore, but it just won't go away. That's where I was. With Lila, my wife, everything on the surface seemed perfect. We had the house, the life we'd talked about, the future, all mapped out. But underneath, there was this subtle shift, a distance I couldn't quite put my finger on. Little things. Her phone always face down. Vague answers about where she'd been. Late nights at work that started piling up. I started questioning my own sanity. Was I just being paranoid, insecure? I hated the person I was becoming, constantly suspicious, looking for clues that weren't there. Or were they? I needed to know. I had to know, for my own peace of mind, one way or the other. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a camera, a tiny little thing, almost invisible. I spent an afternoon finding the perfect spot, tucked away on a bookshelf in the living room. It had a perfect, unobstructed view of the front door and the main hallway. An electronic eye that would see what I couldn't. I didn't tell Leela. I didn't tell anyone. It felt like a betrayal in itself, a silent admission that the trust was already gone. But the not knowing was eating me alive. I set it up, connected it to my phone, and then I just waited. The first night was agonizing. I must have checked the live feed 100 times, my thumb hovering over the app icon. Every creak of the house made my heart jump, but the camera showed nothing. But an empty, silent living room. Just shadows and stillness. The second night was the same. A long, quiet stretch of nothing. Part of me felt a wave of relief. See, you're crazy. You're making it all up. She's just tired from work. I almost convinced myself to turn it off, to delete the app and try to rebuild the trust I was so clearly breaking. But another part of me, that stubborn, gut-wrenching part, whispered, wait, just one more night. The third night. It was just after 10:30. I was upstairs trying to read a book, but the words were just a blur. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A single notification that made my blood run cold. Motion alert, 10:47 p.m. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I tapped the notification and the live feed flickered to life. And there he was. It was Mark. Mark from Leela's office. The guy she always said was just a friend, letting himself into my house with a key. My key, he didn't sneak. He didn't hesitate. He walked in like he owned the place, casually shutting the door behind him. My mind just went blank. I couldn't process it. He strolled into my living room, my sanctuary, and went straight to the liquor cabinet. He pulled out my bottle of whiskey, the good stuff I save for special occasions, and poured himself a generous glass. Then he sat on my couch, in my spot. He kicked his feet up on my coffee table and sipped my whiskey, staring at the blank TV screen like he was just settling in for the night. The sheer audacity of it, the absolute disrespect, it was staggering. It wasn't just a secret meeting, it was an invasion. He was making himself at home in my life, in my absence. I couldn't breathe. It felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my chest. I just stared at the screen, at this man in my house, and a torrent of questions flooded my mind. How long? How long has this been going on? How did he get a key? Did she give it to him? Every possibility was more painful than the last. I felt a surge of white-hot anger, a primal urge to run downstairs and confront him, to throw him out of my house. But I was frozen, paralyzed by the shock and the certainty of what was about to happen next. I knew she was on her way. The camera was my only witness, and I couldn't look away. 15 minutes passed. It felt like an eternity. Every second was a slow, deliberate torture. Then I heard the faint sound of the front door opening again. I held my breath, and there she was, Lila, my wife. She walked in, and the first thing she did was smile. Not her usual tired after-work smile, but a bright, genuine smile aimed directly at Mark. He stood up, and they hugged. It wasn't a quick, friendly hug. It was long, intimate, the kind of embrace that says more than words ever could. It was the hug of two people who share a world I wasn't a part of. She pulled away, and he whispered something in her ear that made her laugh. Then she sat down right beside him on the couch, so close their legs were touching. She kicked off her shoes and leaned her head on his shoulder, sighing contentedly, like she had finally come home. She belonged there, nestled against him. In that single moment, watching them on my phone screen, my heart felt like it didn't just break. It cracked wide open, shattering into a million pieces. Oh, The life I thought I had, the woman I thought I knew. It was all a lie. An elaborate, cruel lie. And I had a front row seat to its unveiling. The anger I felt earlier was gone, replaced by a profound, hollow emptiness. This wasn't just a physical betrayal. It was deeper. The way they sat together, the comfortable silence, the easy intimacy. They had built a life within my life, a relationship right under my nose. All those late nights, the vague excuses, the secretive phone calls. It all clicked into place, forming a picture of deceit that was horrifyingly clear. I felt like a fool. A blind, trusting fool. How could I have missed this? How could she sit across from me at dinner, talk about our future, and then come home to this? I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash my phone against the wall. I wanted to rewind time, to go back to a point before I knew, before this poison seeped into my soul. But I couldn't. All I could do was watch. And a cold, calculated thought cut through the pain. Record, I had to keep recording. This couldn't be just my word against theirs. This couldn't be something they could deny or twist. I needed proof. I needed undeniable, irrefutable evidence of the lie I was living. So, with tears blurring my vision and a void where my heart used to be, I kept my finger steady. I let the camera roll, capturing every stolen touch, every secret smile, every moment of their betrayal. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about the truth, and I was going to capture all of it. The next morning, I woke up with a hollow ache where my heart used to be. The world outside my window looked the same. The sun cast the same warm glow on our bedroom walls. But everything felt different, colder, sharper. I went through the motions, a ghost in my own life. I showered, I got dressed, I made coffee. When Lila came downstairs, dressed in her sharp business suit, she looked radiant, as usual. She smiled. That easy, familiar smile that used to make my world right. Today, it just twisted the knife. She leaned in to kiss me goodbye, her lips brushing my cheek. "Have a great day, honey. My meetings are back to back, so I might be late." I didn't kiss back. I just nodded, a stone in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to touch her, knowing where those lips had been, what secrets they held. I just watched her walk out the door, the click of the lock echoing the finality of it all. The silence that followed was deafening. For hours, I just sat there. The coffee grew cold. The sun moved across the sky. My mind was a relentless storm, replaying the images from the night before. The way he looked at her. The way she laughed. A laugh I thought was reserved only for me. The casual intimacy, the stolen touches. Each memory was a fresh wave of pain, a new betrayal. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? The not knowing was its own kind of torture. I went back through my own memories, searching for clues, for missed signs. The late nights she claimed were work. The sudden business trips. The way she'd angle her phone away from me. All the little red flags I dismissed, explained away with trust. What a fool I'd been. The trust I had given her so freely had been used as a shield for her deception. I felt a surge of anger, hot and clarifying, burning through the fog of my grief. This couldn't just be. I couldn't let her walk away from this, thinking she'd gotten away with it. She needed to see what she had done to face the wreckage she had made of our life. My hands started moving before my brain fully caught up. I went to my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I opened the file. The footage was still there, a digital ghost haunting my hard drive. I downloaded it, the progress bar a slow, agonizing crawl toward the inevitable. Every percentage point felt like a nail in the coffin of our relationship. With the file secured on a USB drive, I walked over to our big screen TV, the one we'd bought together to watch movies on, to build a life around. The irony was bitter. I plugged in the drive, I tested it. His face, her face, filled the screen. I hit pause, leaving their frozen, smiling faces as a placeholder for the horror show to come. My heart was pounding, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. This was real. This was happening. There was no turning back now. I needed a plan. A confrontation, yes, but not a screaming match, not a scene. I wanted cold, hard, undeniable proof. I wanted her to have nowhere to run, no lies to hide behind. I wanted to watch the carefully constructed facade of her perfect life crumble before her eyes, just as she had crumbled mine. The anger was a cold, hard stone in my gut now, giving me a strange sense of clarity. The stage was set. All I needed was my lead actress. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over her contact. My hand was shaking, but my resolve was firm. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice, my emotions. I couldn't let her hear the tremor in my voice, the rage simmering just beneath the surface. I needed to sound normal, casual even. I waited until noon, giving her enough time to get settled into her business meetings. Then I typed out the message, each word a carefully chosen weapon. "Can you come home early tonight? I want to have dinner together." It was simple, innocent, something I'd said 100 times before. It was the perfect Trojan horse. I hit send. The silence stretched, each second an eternity. My phone buzzed almost instantly. A reply. My breath caught in my chest. I opened it. "Of course, darling. That sounds lovely. I'll wrap things up and be home around 6. Can't wait." And then a little heart emoji. A heart emoji. The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. It was so casual, so completely devoid of guilt. Did she feel nothing? Did I mean so little to her? The message was a confirmation of everything I feared. She was living in a completely different reality, one where she could have it all, and I was just the clueless spouse waiting at home. "Perfect," I typed back. One word. It felt final. It felt like the end of everything. Because it was. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange state of calm. The storm inside me had quieted, replaced by a chilling sense of purpose. I didn't clean the house. I didn't prepare a gourmet meal. I just made our favorite simple pasta, the one we used to make on lazy Sundays. A final, cruel parody of our life together. I set the table for 2, just like always. 2 plates, 2 sets of silverware, 2 wine glasses. A perfect little domestic scene, set for the television, which loomed over the dining table like a dark monolith, its blank screen holding the key to the explosion that was about to happen. The minutes ticked by. 5:30, 5-40-5. Then, at exactly 6 o'clock, I heard her key in the lock. The sound made my entire body go rigid. The door opened, and she walked in, dropping her briefcase by the door. "I'm home," she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "Wow, smells delicious." "I'm starving." She walked into the dining room and stopped. She looked at the table, then at me. "Everything okay, sweetie? You seem quiet." I didn't answer. I just looked at her, really looked at her for what felt like the first time in a long time. But all I saw was a stranger, a very convincing actress who had played her part flawlessly. "Sit down, Lila," I said, my voice low and steady. It didn't even sound like my own. A flicker of confusion, then maybe a hint of apprehension, crossed her face. But she did as I asked, taking her usual seat at the table. She placed her napkin in her lap, a nervous habit. "What is this?" she asked, forcing a small laugh. "You're being so serious. Some kind of surprise?" "Oh, it's a surprise, all right," I said. I picked up the TV remote from the table. It felt impossibly heavy in my hand. Her eyes followed my movement, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in them. She knew. Maybe not what, but she knew something was wrong. "I just have a little movie I want us to watch before dinner," I said, my voice dripping with an iciness I didn't know I possessed. It's a romance, or maybe a tragedy. You can decide. And with my heart hammering against my ribs, I pointed the remote at the screen, and I pressed play. Thanks for tuning in. It's just the beginning of the story. If you want to find out what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. Trust me, you're going to want to see this. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think I should do. And if you've ever been through something like this, know you're not alone. We'll see you in the next video. Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're picking up right where we left off, and if you haven't seen the last part, you'll definitely want to go back and watch it. The story's been building, and this is the moment everything changes. For those of you who've been following along, you know the suspicion, the doubt, the gut-wrenching feeling that something was terribly wrong. I had the evidence, the video, the proof I never wanted to find. The only thing left was the confrontation. And let me tell you, no amount of mental preparation can truly get you ready for a moment like that. The air in the house was thick with unspoken words even before she arrived. I just sat there, in the living room, the remote control feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer blow against my sanity. I kept replaying the decision in my head. Was this the right way to do it? Should I scream? Should I cry? In the end, I decided on silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, the silence would be louder than any accusation I could ever shout. She walked in right at 6 p.m., just like she always did. She had this bright smile on her face, the same one I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. She was holding a bag of groceries, humming a little tune, acting as if it was just another normal Tuesday. Hey honey, I'm home. Sorry, traffic was a nightmare. She started rambling about her day, about some annoying coworker, completely oblivious. She didn't notice the stillness of the house or the look on my face. She didn't see the storm that was about to break. I didn't say a word. I just let her talk, her voice echoing in the deafening quiet of what used to be our home. I watched her put the groceries away, her movements so familiar, so routine. It was surreal. It felt like I was watching a movie of my own life, but I was no longer the main character. I was just a spectator, watching it all crumble. The contrast between her casual cheerfulness and the turmoil boiling inside me was staggering. Each normal action she took felt like another twist of the knife. I waited until she came into the living room. She finally seemed to sense something was off. You okay? You're quiet tonight. She came over, ready to give me a hug. I just took a small step back. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I just raised the remote, pointed it at the dark screen of the TV, and pressed play. The silence was broken by the faint sound of the front door opening on the screen. It was Mark, my so-called best friend. The video showed him walking into my house, looking around casually. And then, a few moments later, the video showed her, my wife, walking in behind him. The camera I'd hidden captured it all. The hug. It wasn't just a friendly greeting. It was long, intimate, the kind of embrace that spoke volumes. The kind of embrace that confirmed every single one of my worst fears. I didn't look at her. Keza kept my eyes glued to the screen, watching my world fall apart in grainy footage. The whole scene played out, and with every passing second, the reality of the betrayal solidified. Her face went pale instantly. The cheerful mask she'd been wearing just moments before shattered into a million pieces. All the color drained from her cheeks, replaced by a ghostly white. Her smile vanished, her jaw went slack. It was like watching someone see a ghost. I can't explain. Her voice was a choked whisper, barely audible. Before she could even get the lie out, I cut her off. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, flatly, don't. I watched the whole thing. The whole 30-minute video. Every touch, every whisper the microphone picked up. There was nothing to explain. The evidence was irrefutable. She started shaking her head, tears welling up in her eyes and beginning to stream down her face. It wasn't what it looks like. It wasn't cheating. We were just stressed and... She was grasping at straws, trying to spin a narrative that even she couldn't possibly believe. The desperation in her voice was pathetic. She was trying to convince me, or maybe herself, that this was all some big misunderstanding. But the truth was displayed in high definition right in front of us. There was no misunderstanding. There was only betrayal. I let her cry for a moment. I watched the tears, the frantic denials, and I felt nothing. The part of me that would have rushed to comfort her was gone, burned away by the images on the screen. I stopped her again, my voice still calm but cold. He used my house key, the key I gave him for emergencies. He walks around my house, our house, like he owns the place. And you let him? You welcomed him in. That was the part that cut the deepest. It wasn't just the physical act. It was the profound disrespect, the violation of our home, our sanctuary. She had no answer for that. The truth of my words hit her, and her body seemed to give out. She collapsed into a nearby armchair, her sobs now turning into ragged gasps. She looked broken, but I couldn't find an ounce of sympathy in my heart. All I could see was the smiling face on the TV, embracing another man in the home we built together. All I could feel was the cold, hard certainty of what I had to do next. My mind was clear, my decision made. I didn't yell. I didn't scream or throw things. I didn't get into a pointless, draining argument. What was the point? The damage was done irreparably. The trust was not just broken, it was annihilated. We were past the point of arguments and explanations. We were in the end game. So I walked over to the coffee table where I had left a manila envelope earlier that day. My hand was steady as I picked it up. She looked up at me through her tears, her face a mess of confusion and fear, probably expecting me to finally explode. But I didn't. I simply walked over to her and I handed her one thing. One single sheaf of papers that represented the end of our life together. It was the divorce papers. And they were already signed by me. I'd spent the afternoon with a lawyer, getting everything in order. There was no turning back. I had made my decision the moment I saw that video. My signature was there, clear and firm, on the dotted line. A final, definitive statement. The look on her face when she saw what was in her hands is something I will never forget. It was a cocktail of shock, disbelief, and a dawning, horrifying realization that this was real. This was happening. The sobs caught in her throat. She looked from the papers to my signature, and then up at my face, searching for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of doubt. She found none. My expression was a blank slate. The love, the warmth, the years we had shared, they were all gone. In their place was just a cold, hard resolve. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it away for a cheap thrill with my best friend. The papers in her hand were the consequence. It was the price of her betrayal. I didn't say another word. I just stood there, waiting. I had already mourned our marriage in the hours I spent watching that video over and over again. This moment, this confrontation, it wasn't about anger anymore. It was about closure. It was about taking the first step into a future without her in it. She just stared at the papers, her hands trembling so much they rattled against the pages. "But what about us?" she finally stammered. "What about everything we built? Everything we built." I finally let a bit of the ice in my voice crack. "You and Mark desecrated everything we built right here in this living room. There is no us anymore. You made that choice. I made mine." I turned to leave the room, to give her space to process the end of her world, the one she had set on fire herself. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I just felt a profound, hollow emptiness. But within that emptiness, there was a tiny spark of something else. Freedom. The freedom from the lies, the deceit, the constant gnawing suspicion. The path ahead was going to be incredibly difficult. I knew that. But for the first time in months, I could see a path. A path that was mine and mine alone. Oh. It was a painful, brutal end, but it was also a necessary new beginning. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. The fallout from this is massive, and we will be diving into all of it in the next video. What happens next with her, with Mark, and with my own journey to rebuild? It's going to be a long road. Thank you all so much for listening and for being a part of this community. Your support has meant the world to me through this whole ordeal. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you've got those notifications turned on. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I do read them all. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. A few days later, while I was in the middle of packing up my life, the doorbell rang. And who was it? Mark. He leaned against the doorframe, a smug grin plastered on his face. Hey man, no hard feelings, right? He actually had the nerve to hold out his hand, expecting me to shake it, like this was all some friendly competition we'd just finished. I just stared at his hand, then looked back at him. I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I didn't even need to say anything. I just hit play on the video from the security camera. I watched his face as he saw himself on the screen, with her. That arrogant smirk just melted away, replaced by a look of pure panic. His smile was gone. I let the video play for a few more seconds, just to let it really sink in. Then I calmly said, "You can explain that to your wife." His eyes went wide, and he stammered, "What? What wife?" Oh, that was the best part. You see, the whole time I was dealing with my own heartbreak, I did a little digging. It turns out Mark wasn't just some single guy playing the field. Oh no, he had a wife. A wife who probably thought he was working late or out with the boys. So he wasn't just cheating with my wife. He was cheating on his own. The level of deceit was just staggering. It was a betrayal wrapped in another betrayal. I looked him dead in the eye. "Yeah, your wife." The color drained from his face. He started sputtering, trying to come up with some excuse, some lie. But what could he say? The evidence was right there, playing on a loop on my phone. He tried to grab for my phone, but I pulled it back. "Don't even think about it," I said, my voice low and steady. "It's a little late for damage control." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet finality of it all was so much more powerful. He just stood there, defeated. The cocky guy from a few minutes ago completely gone, replaced by a pathetic, cornered man. While he was still processing the implosion of his world, I was already typing. I had his wife's number. It wasn't that hard to find, really. Quick search, a few clicks, and there it was. I attached the video file to a message. I didn't add any commentary, no angry tirade. The video spoke for itself. I just wrote, "I think you deserve to see this." And then I hit send. It was the most satisfying button press of my entire life. I watched the little checkmark turn blue, indicating she'd seen it. I could almost feel the shockwave from miles away. By the end of that night, 2 marriages were over. Mine and his. It wasn't a celebration for me. My own marriage was still gone, and the pain of that was very real. But there was a strange, grim sense of justice. He didn't get away with it. He didn't get to just walk away, leaving a trail of destruction, and move on to his next victim without any consequences. He had to face the music, just like I did. His betrayal had a price, and that night the bill came due. I finished packing my boxes in silence. It was the end of a chapter, a really painful one. But as I closed the door on that house for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A flicker of hope. It was a new beginning. A difficult one, for sure, but it was mine. Free from the lies and the deceit. I was finally moving on. 3 months later, I found myself in a small apartment in Denver. The air smelled different here, crisp and cool, a stark contrast to the humid, heavy atmosphere I'd left behind. It was a new city, a new job, a new life. Most importantly, it was a new kind of peace. A quiet I hadn't realized I was so desperately craving. My days fell into a simple, predictable rhythm. Wake up, coffee, work, gym, dinner, read, sleep. It wasn't exciting, not in the way my old life had been, filled with drama and emotional highs and lows, but it was stable. It was mine. The small apartment wasn't much, just a single room with a kitchenette and a view of a brick wall, but it felt like a fortress. My fortress, no one could enter without my permission. No one could disrupt my peace. I was slowly, meticulously putting myself back together. I remember thinking about how strange it was. For years, my life had revolved around another person. Her moods dictated my moods. Her plans became my plans. Now, there was just ... me. And it was terrifying at first. The silence was deafening. I had to learn to enjoy my own company, to listen to my own thoughts without the constant filter of someone else's opinion. I started hiking on weekends, exploring the mountains that surrounded the city. The physical exertion was a welcome distraction, a way to burn off the restless energy that still lingered. Each step up a trail felt like a step away from the past. With every summit, I felt a little lighter, a little more free. The person I was before felt like a stranger, someone who lived a lifetime ago. This new me was quieter, more reserved, but also stronger. One evening, I was curled up on my lumpy second-hand couch, a book in my lap, a cup of tea steaming on the coaster beside me. It was just a normal Tuesday. The city lights twinkled outside my window. My phone buzzed, a text message. I almost ignored it, assuming it was just a notification from my bank or a food delivery app, but something made me pick it up. The name on the screen sent a jolt through me, a phantom limb ache for a life I no longer had. It was Lila. My heart did a stupid little flip-flop, a muscle memory I thought I had trained out of it. The message was short, just 5 words. I miss you. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. Each word was a hook, trying to pull me back into that churning, chaotic sea. I miss you. How easy it was for her to type that. Did she miss me, or did she miss the comfort I provided? Did she miss the way I took care of everything? The way I always forgave her? The way my love was a constant, steady shore she could always return to, no matter how far she drifted? And can we talk? What was there to talk about? Could words really patch up the gaping hole that had been torn in the fabric of our life together? Could an apology erase the image of another man's shoes by my front door? Could it silence the echoes of their laughter in a home I thought was ours? I thought about all the conversations we could have, the tearful apologies, the promises of change, the desperate pleas for another chance. I played the entire movie in my head. I pictured myself replying. I pictured meeting her for coffee. I saw her looking beautiful and remorseful, her eyes welling up as she told me how sorry she was, how it was the biggest mistake of her life. I saw myself starting to soften, the old familiar pull of our history drawing me back in. And that's when I knew I couldn't do it. Because I had spent the last 3 months learning a very painful, very necessary lesson. The moment someone lets another person walk into your shared home, into that sacred space you've built together, they're not just letting them cross a physical threshold. They're letting them walk right into the heart of your relationship. They are showing you, in the most brutal way possible, that the boundaries you thought were solid are, in fact, permeable. They're showing you that your trust, your sense of security, is secondary. I realized then that trust isn't like a broken vase that you can painstakingly glue back together. Sure, you can piece it together, but the cracks will always be there. You'll always see the fractures. You'll always be afraid to fill it with water, terrified it will shatter again at the slightest pressure. You can't live like that. Always second-guessing, always wondering, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's not love. It's a prison sentence. Real trust, once it's fundamentally broken, doesn't get rebuilt. It gets replaced by a constant, gnawing anxiety. And I had chosen peace. I had chosen my fortress. I had chosen me. So, with a deep breath that felt like the first clean one I'd taken in years, I held down my finger on her name. The option appeared on the screen. Block. I tapped it. Not out of anger. The fiery rage had burned itself out weeks ago, leaving behind only ashes and a strange, hollow clarity. I blocked her because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the strongest, most loving thing you can do for yourself is to not try and rebuild. Sometimes, you just have to walk away and build something new. Something that is entirely, beautifully, and peacefully your own. Thank you for listening.